It's like folks are trickling in. Bit of a slow, cold morning. Everybody's bodies are adjusting from the rapid. It was 80 degrees to now. Oh, Vermont.
So classic Vermont. Quite
That's
this
right. So classic Vermont. Let's see. Well, we'll get, pardon me. We'll get started as folks join. I want to make sure we have enough time for questions for Emily. Welcome. It's our first one without Sherry. And Jen. It's kind of sad. I'm sure they're enjoying their respite. So we have a pretty full agenda for today. Emily Hazard and Carolyn Long, I think Carolyn's joining, will be doing a walkthrough of what the online application looks like for the CCFAP application for families. So that'll be, I think, very interesting. We also have, Anna will be talking a bit more about the strategic plan and goal 3. I'll give a quick annual quality, the QSIP is what we're calling it, the annual payment update. And then any announcements from our friends and partners. So if you could, in the chat, just put your name, your role, and your organization, that would be terrific. Anna, do you have anything to add before we transition in?
I don't think so. Thanks all for being here. Wi-Fi is acting up, so you'll see I'm gonna kind of go on and off camera today, so bear with me. And hopefully it's better by the time I want to share my screen. But it's good to see you all. I'm excited for our agenda. Thanks, Dawn.
Yeah, thanks. So Emily, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I know you're going to be sharing your screen, so welcome.
I am. Thanks, Dawn. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Hazard. I'm the program administrator for the Child Care Financial Assistance Program. So I oversee just all things CCFAP. And I am excited to share a demo of the online application. So the online application went live last September, and we have had over 6,000 online applications submitted in the first year. I don't have data on how many were eligible, but we know just eligibility over the past year for CCFAP has really increased in relation to the income guidelines increases. So I will share my screen. Okay. I feel like this is like my first time screen sharing with Zoom. Much more of a Teams user, so if something seems awry, just let me know. So I'm just going to start. This is going to be very informal. I'm just going to give a walkthrough, things that I think are worth pointing out. It can provide some insight on why some things were developed the way that they were. I was a part of the development and ongoing development of CDDIS, so can help provide a little insight into why we did some things. So this will be pretty informal. So the Child Care Financial Assistance landing page, CDD's website, we have just general information about the program, about eligibility, how to apply. We still have a paper application. The paper application is not, we don't plan for it to go anywhere. It's still an option. And then we also link to the CDDIS parent portal, which is where applicants go to submit an online application. And also when parents, even if they submit a paper application and they provide an email address, they'll be able to access their parent portal. So even if they don't apply online, they can still use their parent portal to access all of their notices, letters, all of that information. So the parent portal has multiple purposes. So clicking in, I just have like a tester account login. I've already set this up. It is a requirement to access the parent portal that users set up multi-factor authentication, which I'm sure you've all experienced in one way or another in these like higher tech times. So you do need to do multi-factor authentication, which is usually just like a text or an email. So that should be all set. Like you can see, I'm getting a text to my phone to just verify that it is indeed me. And I've logged in before, so a first-time user will have a few more steps, but as somebody who's logged in before to do test applications, it was a lot more simple to log in as a not new user. So here's a landing page for the CDDIS parent portal. So we provide some information here, information about CCFAP. If you have questions about benefits, connect with your eligibility specialist. This links to just the general contact info for the community child care support agencies in the 12 regions. We have the option if parents want some help with logging in, or if they're getting weird messages, or they're like, I don't know how to use this part of the parent portal, they can contact our CDDIS help desk. We have a small team of people who are very skilled in navigating challenges that people have, very responsive to getting back to them. And those are often questions that eligibility specialists may have a harder time answering for families. They really are more like technical, I'm locked out of CDDIS. I need my password reset. Our help desk helps with that. So parents can submit a new application, submit a renewal application. So this is really important for the online application. In the development, we learned that the online application is not super mobile friendly, and we know that that is very far from ideal. We're looking into ways to make the application a little more mobile friendly, but completing on a phone, some of the fields just don't fit on a phone screen. So we do say for best user experience, optimal functionality, we recommend using a computer or a tablet rather than a mobile phone. That's just our disclaimer. We know we are working on ways that this could potentially be improved, but there are some limitations to the platform that we have. If parents have an application that's in draft, they can leave an application in draft and come back to it, tell them how to access that. They can view previously submitted applications, report a change, upload supporting documents, and then just the general link to CCFAP. They arrive to this page another way. So I'll show you my applications. These are just test applications. I don't actually have children in childcare, so don't worry about nothing secure is being shared. So my applications, I've had a couple test applications in here, and I can see, when I created them, when I submitted them, and then there's this list of definitions. So withdrawn, I can see my application was withdrawn. If I have questions, I can contact the Community Child Care Support Agency. Rejected, my application was rejected, and there's a notice about why it was rejected. Most important ones, so applicants would be able to see an application status, active if they were determined eligible, denied if they were denied, and there's the notice in their portal that has more information about the denial. draft. So a draft application has not been submitted yet, and I'll show you as we go through the application where parents are reminded you have to submit your application. A draft application isn't routed to anyone, it just sits in the system. Parents do get reminders, so when they have an application in draft, they'll get a reminder 7 days after they started, and then they'll get a reminder 28 days after they start the application. It's automatically withdrawn on the 30th day, and they get another notification that says your application was withdrawn. So they get reminders to submit an application. They also get a notice, they'll get an email when their application was submitted, just that confirmation. And it has a little information about, you'll be hearing from an eligibility specialist soon. If you have questions, you can reach out to Community Child Care Support Agency. So we have these statuses pending. It's been submitted and is being routed to an eligibility specialist for processing. So a pending application, the specialist hasn't started processing it yet. Submitted, the application is being processed, and then they'll get that active when they are determined eligible. There's also a tab for notices. So you can see from past applications, I get the application in progress, final reminder notice, and I can show you this is what this notice looks like. I have a draft. If your application is not submitted by a very concrete date, that's the 30 days from when I started, it will be automatically withdrawn. So when these notices are generated, parent portal users just get an email that says you have a new notice, and it provides the link to log into the parent portal to actually view the notice. This information is not in an email for security purposes. It doesn't say you started an application. You have to log into your portal to be able to read the notice, and that I think is very similar to other platforms that have secure information. I receive a reminder from my doctor that I have an appointment coming up. It doesn't say you have an appointment this date. It says log in to view the notice that you have related to your appointment. So yeah, the notices are all available, and this is also where it would show when a family is eligible, it will show their statement of eligibility, which breaks down payment amounts, dates, all of the information about their eligibility. That would also show here. Okay, so I'm going to do a walkthrough submitting an application. So at the top, once you start this application, you have 30 days to finish and submit it. If you don't submit it within 30 days, it will be withdrawn. Missing information will delay processing. I know this is a question that comes up often, both for families, providers, eligibility specialists, for everyone, around missing information. So when the online application was designed, we put in requirements for the minimum amount of information to submit the application. The minimum amount of information to determine eligibility is different than what's needed to submit an application. Technically parents, they can also submit a paper application that's missing some information, and the eligibility specialist will follow up with them to request the information that's needed to determine their eligibility. So there is a minimum amount of information that's required to submit an online application. That's the parent's name, physical address, reason for needing care, and they need to have at least one child household member, because if they don't have at least one child household member, they wouldn't be eligible. They wouldn't have a household that could potentially be eligible for CCFAP. So that information, by requiring that information, it allows for the application to be routed to the correct eligibility specialist. So the system knows, in Washington County, if you have the last name H and are working, your application is being routed to the eligibility specialist that processes applications for families with the last name beginning with H and are working. So we do say missing information will delay processing. Piece of feedback I've heard a lot is a lot of incomplete applications are being submitted. I think it's a balance between, do we require more fields to be completed in order to submit the application and potentially have that be a barrier for families in submitting an application, saying, I have to answer this question, I don't know how. If I don't answer it, it's going to prevent me from submitting this application. So that's something that was taken into consideration when we decided to have fewer questions required. We do have a couple updates to this online application in mind. So if there's specific feedback about questions that people feel very strongly should be required, that's something we can take into consideration. But that was the thought process behind having minimum required information. So we provide some information on just eligibility criteria, forms that may be required for your service need and other verification are listed later. If you have any questions, staff at your local CCCSA can help. So you'll see the required questions, the fields that have to be completed are marked with an asterisk. You also have to have an email address because you have to have an email address to be able to link into the parent, to log into the parent portal. Some of this is just auto-filled from, I think, a previous application. So none of these questions are required, but an eligibility specialist will need to know the answer to these as they process, so they may follow up. I have seen many applications submitted with all of the information and all of the supporting documentation uploaded. So there are quite a few applications that are submitted with everything that's needed to process them, which is really great. I didn't click next. Okay. The reason for needing care, we have the reasons for needing care. Protective services and REACH-UP are both authorized by either a family services worker or a REACH-UP case manager. So an online application is not needed for those reasons for needing care. So I'm just going to say attending school, ask me for number of hours. And then this is the section for you must add at least one child to submit the application. Household members include all children and your spouse, civil union partner, or legal parent of your children if they live with you. This is another area that information is often missing from, both on online applications and paper applications, is applicants sometimes leave off the second parent, which the eligibility specialist will follow up to say, can you provide information on, is the second parent living in your household? Is there child support? But there's really no way for us to flag, if somebody if somebody has a second parent in their household and isn't adding them in this screen, that's really the follow-up from the eligibility specialist. We do provide the information that they are included in the household members. I'm going to try to add little Amelia Bedelia. When I do add, this is searching for household members so that were on previous applications. So Amelia Bedelia may exist in CDDIS, but if she wasn't on my application in the past, I wouldn't have access to know that she was in the system. So I would need to add her as a member. And then in subsequent applications or next applications, I should be able to Amelia should just be on my application. I won't have to search for her in this way. I can add name, date of birth. This information, again, regarding child support isn't required, but an eligibility specialist may follow up if there are questions. This is also same with the information about child care provider information. I could put it here. I could leave it blank, but the eligibility specialist will follow up. It's missing. And Amelia is in my household, so I'm just going to go next. But then you just repeat the process to add any other household members. Household income and expenses. Tell us about your household gross income before deductions such as taxes and expenses. Child support paid to another household and college savings plan contributions are the only eligible expenses for CCFAP eligibility purposes. So this is another area I know comes up a lot is, well, why was my income calculated so much higher than I'm actually taking home? Eligibility is based on gross income with a few exceptions. Self-employment, one of the options for calculating self-employment income is based more on net. But in general, gross income before deductions such as taxes is what's used for determining eligibility. So when I add in my income, confuse all these things, let's say I get 1,000 weekly. So this screen shows the total income. This is another area that I think is sometimes leads to confusion, is how this 4,300 was determined if I'm paid 1,000 weekly. So for weekly payments, weekly income, we multiply by 4.3, because when you look at a year, when you look at 52 weeks in a year divided by 12, there are 4.3 weeks in a month. Biweekly, we do 2.15. So sometimes that multiplier is also something that throws off. Parents doing that income calculation themselves is not understanding, well, why was it calculated so high? This is how the calculations are done. And it would show just total household income, so parents could have that preview of, well, this is what I entered. This is how the household countable monthly income is being determined at this point. The eligibility specialist is still going to verify getting pay stubs, other income verification that may alter these amounts, but it at least gives parents an idea of what they entered and what is being calculated based on what they entered. This section has a list of forms needed for different service needs. And income, we need verification of all sources of income, expenses, what to provide. And I think we say earlier too, the required forms, they're not linked here. But I think we say you can reach out to an eligibility specialist for the form, or you can get the form online. I forget exactly how that's worded. Putting a hyperlink in here, it comes with some risks of broken links, as the state's website sometimes changes. If we use a hyperlink, it could be broken, and it's actually a lot more challenging to make changes to the online application than it seems. So that just seemed like the most stable way for us to be able to say you need this form without being able to link to it. Would be more ideal to be able to link, but broken links happen all the time and can lead to more frustration. So submit application is the next step. We say, please follow the instructions below, upload documents. A parent could say no, that they don't want to upload documents at this time, or they could say yes. Submit your application. After uploading your documents, you must click the submit application button. This step is crucial to ensure your application is officially submitted. So it sounds like this might be a step that some parents are missing too, is completing the application up until this point, but not hitting submit. Again, a draft application is not routed to an eligibility specialist. It's only after the parent submits the application that it's routed to the eligibility specialist. So I can say yes. So this is very exciting. This is actually a change from this week that we just made some improvements to the process for uploading documents. We had some challenges with document size, readability. There are times when documents are actually stored not within CDDIS in a kind of tangential online database, that sometimes that connection between the database and CDDIS can be broken. So needed to make sure if a parent was uploading a document during a time where that connection wasn't happening, that there's nothing they need to do on their end. the document will be routed to the eligibility specialist once the connection is restored. So we made a bunch of improvements to the process for uploading documents, including more directions. So we only accept PDF documents or images like JPEGs or PNG. There's a file size. Files should be less than 20 megabytes, which is much bigger than it was. I forget what it was before. So they get the list again of what required information and forms. Just a reminder of what's needed. And then this is where the directions again for uploading, for adding files. You can do paste stub, choose file, and upload. But I'm just going to exit out of this. So after, if I had gone through the upload process, it would bring me back to this page. This is a summary. And again, this reminds, if your application status shows as draft, you must click submit application, which is here. To officially submit your application, if you wish to upload documents, parents can upload documents even after they submit an application. And this gives just like a summary of what I've completed. So I'm just going to go ahead and submit application. And this is the consent form they fill out. And then this is the application signature. This has the same, kind of binding agreement as a hard copy signature. Typed is acceptable. Oops. I didn't check this box. I have to check this box. So I submitted my application, and I should have an email that says that application CDDIS 67750 was submitted or is pending, and that I'll be hearing from an eligibility specialist soon. So that's really all I had planned to share. Questions? Feedback? Like I said, we have a few enhancements in mind or improvements, but really we're trying to, for efficiency and because we don't have an endless amount of resources to make IT system updates, we're trying to group them and do them all at once. Yeah, Michelle.
Thank you, Emily, for that presentation. I actually asked my teammates who are actually our TCFAP eligibility specialists for the region what their feedback was since I was going to be with you today so that you could have it. And I will happily report back to them that you've already are successfully working on some of these things. They particularly mentioned that a client, when they upload the documents are not always successful, even with PNG documents. And so parents get frustrated, obviously, with that. So they have to send them a missing items letter or ask them to upload it again, or if they're comfortable, send it through email. So that's been an ongoing issue. And the other feedback that they've gotten from parents is that they don't always find the online application parent-friendly. So some of them have actually turned back to paper applications. So some of the feedback. And then the other thing they did mention is that when they are supposed to be getting a new application or download through the CDIS system, they're not always getting a bell notification that they have one there to review. So I'm not sure what's happening on that end.
Yeah, that's good to know. And those are things, if eligibility specialists have issues like, oh, I didn't get a notification that there was an online application, those are good things to report to the CDDIS help desk so that we can figure out why, because eligibility specialists should be getting notifications.
Okay, so send it to the help desk. Okay, I'll have them do that because I know that they are in regular contact with Kim, their monitor, but just make sure that they send it through. And then you addressed the other one, so thank you for doing that around that there's a minimum amount that people need to put in versus if they don't check all those boxes, again, it slows down the process because they have to collect all the information needed to actually process the application. So, but thank you for addressing. You already had addressed most of their concerns, so that's great.
Great, thank you for that feedback. Yeah, and eligibility specialists are also a really important part. You know, I hear often like information is missing from an application, and as we look to see if we should make more of those fields required, I'll definitely want eligibility specialist input on which questions specifically are skipped over more often than not. And, you know, we can take that information into consideration.
Other questions for Emily?
Yeah, if you
Wow.
think of anything after, if you have questions or any feedback, feel free to reach out.
Yes. Well, again, thank you for coming and doing that demo. I know for myself, it's always helpful to actually see the steps rather than sort of conceptually understand the steps. So actually, I was going to ask you to do this with me personally.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. The application flow kind of loosely follows what an eligibility specialist is doing, like maybe not even loosely, closely follows what an eligibility specialist may see on their side, with a few modifications to make it, you know, things that parents don't need to complete or do in the system, not even visible to them. But other than that, you know, this was built very much from scratch. We didn't have a template of, we need an online application for childcare financial assistance. You know, we were given this like beautifully packaged thing that we could make some modifications to. Like, it was built from scratch last year, which I feel like is very impressive and also like a very challenging thing to do. I've learned IT system development is so complicated, and I've learned a lot, but also like it's not, you know, it's not my forte. I don't have formal education in IT system development, but learning as we go, and yeah, keeping things in mind for future updates or changes. And yeah, welcome feedback, welcome.
Yeah, I really appreciate this presentation and all of the work that you're doing and the sort of continuous quality improvement, being mindful of sort of what fields are required, and again, monitoring like how many like if there are changes that should be made there. I think that that's it's clear that this is an iterative process and that you are paying attention to those things. I'm curious if you have a sense or also sort of tracking like stalled applications, or where folks are getting stuck, so that there could be a little bit more of like a prompt, like don't forget to submit, or you know, those emails where it's like you almost completed your registration, or like there's still something in your shopping cart.
Yeah, that's why. So we do have we have two of the reminder emails. So there's the one that is sent out a week after the application is started, and then I think it's the 28 days, giving them that like 2-day warning of like, you're really close to that 30-day time frame. We don't do too much digging into just the data around like draft applications.
Yeah.
There are a lot of times where eligibility specialists will receive a new paper application, and then when they actually go to enter it, they can see that the parent maybe had a draft application that they started, but then they chose to do a paper application instead.
Gotcha.
So we know that happens, but we haven't done too much digging into like why draft applications are just kind of left as is, or they go to that withdrawn status after the 30 days. Yeah, I'm sure there's a variety of reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. But it sounds like you know, people are figuring out the workaround if they're getting stuck with on the online application. Again, we've got a great longstanding eligibility specialist system set up. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think like some of the feedback, the more specific feedback is really helpful. Like I think one of the things that I had seen recently, and I can't remember where it's from, but at the top we say missing information will delay processing of your application. I saw a recommendation for saying something like an eligibility, if there are unanswered questions, an eligibility specialist will be following up with you, something just a little more clear about if there's missing information, what to expect. So that sort of like language prompt is really helpful. And like, well, how could we change this messaging a little bit so it's even clearer of like what we mean here? We're also currently looking at like, are there questions on the application that we just don't need? I think we've done that a few times over the years. And we've been able to get rid of a few questions, but a lot of the information we ask for at this point it's needed for some reason, or we have to ask. But we are continuing to look at areas where, you know, there's a question about, does your employer contribute to childcare costs? That's an application on the paper, an online application. We don't actually do anything with that information. So we intend to remove that question from both applications. But again, it's grouping all those things together to make those changes at once instead of just kind of like one off. Oh, let's remove this one question now. So, you know, lots of things that we're noting of, we should only be asking things that we're using that information for a specific purpose.
I see Carolyn Long has joined us too, our Director of Operations. So welcome, Carolyn.
Hi, everybody.
know.
Sorry I'm late. Yeah. I was just going to piggyback on the application too. So it's such a battle, right? Because all the questions on the application are ones that like most of them are ones that are required, but then too, like we get so many questions about families and making new policies, and a lot of times it's like, well, we don't have the data because it's not on the application, or we don't ask it, right? And it's not necessarily needed, but sometimes it's wanted. So it's that balance of like trying to figure out ease of use, like ability to report out on really important key factors that could help families in the long run. So it's challenging, but we definitely hear that the application is challenging for folks.
Any other questions or thoughts for Emily or Carolyn? Well, thank you both for joining us. Like I said, I think this was a great demo for folks to actually see the procedures. As you were talking, I was thinking just the ability to get the application started, even if you don't have every document ready to be uploaded, I think is such a benefit. A billion years ago, when I was a director of a center in New Hampshire, we were what was called a contracted center, so we could do the eligibility in-house. And, you know, I know the struggle of the back and forth with documentation. So just to be able to get that application started and, you know, connect with an eligibility specialist, I think is great for families as they look to access our financial assistance programs, which we know are working because we're seeing the uptick.
Yeah, another piece of feedback that I've heard over the past year is that a lot of families who are new to CCFAP just have a lot more questions about how the program works. This is their first time filling out an application like this. So that's also been part of the learning curve of the past year. That I know over time there will continue to be families who are new to CCFAP who have similar questions, but I think just the number of new families over the past year and the number of questions has felt like a lot, because it is a lot. But I think over time, you know, as families are doing their renewal application, they may remember this was information I needed to provide last year, so I'm just going to do this right away, and then I'll just have my application done. So I think we'll see over time that there will be fewer applications that are missing information and that are just submitted more complete because it's not their first time doing something like this. So it's definitely been a big learning curve. I think for everyone, you know, it's time of change. Yeah, it's a lot of change all at once. So it takes a little bit of time to adjust.
Well, again, thank you. Like this was great. So
Great. Yeah, and let me know if it would be helpful to come back at some point, or you know, in the future. I don't know how soon we're hoping to make some of those improvements, but if it would be helpful to revisit the revamp. Shouldn't be, it's really not going to be too much of a revamp, but you know, if it'd be helpful, happy to come back.
okay. So we're gonna move to the next thing on our agenda. You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to go.
I'm gonna hop off. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.
So we're turning it over to Anna for our strategic plan governance and goal 3 discussion. So take it away, Anna.
Thank you, Dawn. All right, I'm gonna attempt to share my screen, and my Wi-Fi is a little rocky, so we'll see what it can handle this morning. And I'm just gonna share a couple of slides, but want to spend most of this segment of our meeting discussing kind of the next chapter for ELD. We said goodbye to our friends, as Dawn noted last meeting. So this is kind of our first meeting, kind of thinking about what's next, and that aligns really well with kind of the timing of a new strategic plan. So just a really quick overview, and this, I will just note everything that I'm sharing about kind of the way in which we're thinking about strategic plan governance is very much a draft and something that we're still workshopping with partners and gathering feedback on. So none of this is set in stone, and I welcome any kind of comments or questions folks have. But we are planning to support implementation of the new strategic plan fairly similarly, but with some adjustments based on kind of the new goals, based on our capacity as an organization, and based on what we've heard from partners. So we intend to continue kind of holding goal-based groups. Some goals have multiple groups, kind of depending on the scope. And these groups really exist to track progress, to surface policy needs through our annual policy recommendation process, and to support us in aligning action towards implementation of the strategic plan. One thing we were really focused on in developing this year's these next several years plan to implement the strategic plan is to really try to leverage existing coalitions and tables where a lot of these conversations are already happening in earnest, and to not reinvent the wheel or ask people to join more new tables or conversations than might be necessary. And another thing that I think we're thinking about a little bit more critically at BBF right now is just how to support that kind of continuous feedback loop, how to ensure that our kind of insights that we learn from our regional councils and our regional manager team are informing our state level monitoring and the annual policy recommendations. So you hopefully have heard us kind of talk and think about that more in the past year or so. So next is just a really high level overview of the goals of the new the 2030 strategic plan for early childhood in the state. And some notes about kind of the committee structure that we are thinking or proposing to have. Most importantly, and this is what we'll focus our conversation on today, you'll see that goal 3 related to early learning and development, we plan to continue have governed by this group. So we're going to have a conversation today about kind of the name and the scope and the focus, and what you all would like to see and focus on in the coming year. But kind of the highlights or the headline here is really that goal 3 is perhaps where there's kind of the least flux in how we're thinking about this work. Family economic security is an area where we're still kind of figuring out our approach. We know that there's a lot of partners with a lot of expertise at other tables already, like hunger councils. There's a lot of, regional housing tables and conversations happening along with transportation. So we're really thinking about how to leverage those regional and statewide conversations and then bring together kind of a select group of partners a couple of times a year to help us identify progress and think about recommendations and continuously identify some of those needs. Goal 2 will continue to be governed by the COAT committee, which has historically kind of focused on both basic needs and health and mental health. It'll have a little bit more of kind of a health and mental health and environmental health focus. But will largely kind of continue to operate as it does. And, we'll be thinking about kind of ensuring that membership is representative of the new robust nature of goal 2. Goal 4 is one that we've had a lot of conversations about with folks in today's virtual space. We hope to continue a really strong partnership with PPD led by Becky and the team at Northern Lights, as well as partners at CDD. And with that said, our new kind of goal 4 is really kind of broader early childhood workforce, not just early childhood education workforce focused. So we're thinking about what it looks like to bring together an advisory group that is more kind of sector wide across sectors and pulling together partners from the mental health workforce and others. So that is kind of a piece that we are still having conversations with partners about and open to kind of thoughts and feedback on. And then finally, goal 5 is an area that we have a lot of existing kind of infrastructure and committees that support this work, given that it's a really multifaceted goal. So we have, of course, the State Advisory Council is really thinking about that big picture system of care. But we also have really key conversations happening at our Families and Communities Committee, which is where we're having families really one of the places that families are really leading the way and involved in decision making and identifying priorities, as well as the Data and Evaluation Committee, which has a lot of key data stewards in the state helping us support that long-term vision for data integration and continuous monitoring. So that's enough of that. I'm going to move on to my next slide. To just kind of reiterate that goal 3 and ELD, I think you'll see as members who've participated, we expect that this will largely look pretty familiar to folks. I do want to kind of call out that I think there are a couple of areas in which we have focused less as a committee that are in goal 3 that I'd like to kind of ask folks to think about kind of our representation or membership around, but also what topics we might want to explore in the next year. So, I feel like we've had fewer conversations as a committee about early elementary school settings, things like early literacy, CIS, we've talked a little bit about, but I think there's more kind of space for us to dive into some of those topics adjacent to early childhood education. We intend to keep membership largely the same and hope you all continue to join us in that. As we've talked about, we are kind of actively looking for a private co-chair and really interested in other partners who might want to join Dawn and I in supporting and planning our monthly agendas. I plan to continue to staff this work. And we heard this group's feedback about the importance of meeting really regularly. We had initially proposed maybe moving to an every other month schedule, given kind of capacity. But we heard the group and think that there's a lot of important things to dive into, particularly as we continue to monitor Act 76. So intend to keep meeting roughly monthly, acknowledging that there will probably be a handful of months that we need to take off for holidays or other needs. So that is the plan. And then also just this note that, and I think we have some of my colleagues from our regional team on the call, but really, again, wanting to kind of refocus on the kind of integration of the network and the rich conversations happening at our regional councils and the way in which they can support us doing this statewide work and elevating topics that warrant more discussion. So, I'm going to shortly take down the screen share so we can have more of a conversation and folks can see each other. But these are kind of my prompts for our next segment of the meeting. First, would really welcome folks to think about and provide us feedback on the name. I think early learning and development has served us well, and there are other words that the strategic plan uses and other kind of sectors or priorities within goal 3 of the strategic plan. So would welcome creativity and thoughts around the name. And then kind of after we discuss that, would love to just kind of have a broader conversation about what's next for 2026 and what the group sees as priorities for recruitment and how Dawn and I might be able to support that. As well as kind of creating a wish list of topics or priorities to dive in together too over the next year. So I'm going to stop talking at you, and I think my Wi-Fi more or less hung in, so hopefully people got most of that. But let's open it up. Does anybody have questions? I guess I'll pause and see if anybody has questions about kind of our initial proposal or thoughts around strategic plan governance and the role of ELT. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So I think we can probably dive into the name. Does anybody have ideas or inspiration about a new name for ELT? I think this is something that Sherry had thoughts and opinions on. We might have to phone a friend at some point between meetings.
Do you have any that you can throw out that you're considering? Because it might help us. So like, which one do you like? Hey, here's 5. Which one should we sort of either accept or morph a little bit, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Helen. I should have come with some ChatGPT generated ideas. I
Well,
think
you're probably thinking about what's in the strategic plan. You referenced that, the different
Yeah.
terminology and stuff like that. What are those?
right. Yeah, so I think one of
terms.
the things we've wrestled with at BBF and within the space of this work is like, what term are we using for early childhood education? We talk about childcare, the committee's title is early learning. People talk about early care and learning, right? So I guess where we landed in the strategic plan is early childhood education. You'll see references to childcare and other words when we're kind of referencing like specific settings or the need for childcare as a parent or a family. But we are largely trying to use early childhood education to kind of acknowledge where it feels like the field is heading. But open to thoughts and feedback on like how that might fit into the name of this committee.
Well, I'll just throw in something, which is, early childhood is defined as birth through age 8. So I think it's important to help remind the larger community that when we say early childhood, we are talking about early and elementary ages. We are talking about a larger span of birth to age 5, or, that sort of infant toddler care. It's a broader spectrum than just childcare. So I'm a fan of early education, because I think it does offer the opportunity to encompass some of those other topics.
Thanks, Dawn. Any other naming thoughts? If people don't, Beverly, go ahead.
Well, I was just trying to think about how to distinguish it from the workforce committee. I mean, the workforce committee is easy because they've got a clear name, the EC Workforce Committee, or whatever they're going to name themselves. But this is a little broader, and because this, maybe I'm wrong about this, but it feels like the first time there's been two committees sort of focused on separating these two aspects, if I'm remember correctly. So I guess that's some of what I'm trying to think about, is how to distinguish it. How is this different? I mean, I sort of know, but
Yeah, so something that indicates that it's not workforce, that workforce isn't one of our kind of main or foundational topics.
Adding on to that, you could pull something really from the actual goal itself, right? Child development and well-being, something of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, this is all helpful. This might be better suited for a poll. So maybe I will spend some time with ChatGPT and all of your feedback and ideas and send folks a poll in between meetings and ask for folks' votes that way. But let's use, I think we only have another 10 or 15 minutes or so in this segment. So would love to hear. I think we had a conversation probably about a year ago at this time about membership and ideas around recruitment. And a lot of you had great feedback, and we have some new members thanks to that conversation. But I think thinking about goal 3, and I should put the link in the chat to the current draft of the strategic plan for those that don't have it up. But thinking about the goal 3 of the strategic plan, would be curious folks' thoughts about who is currently missing from our table that represents the type of sample strategies in the strategic plan. Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Some folks that I think are missing is family childcare is obviously missing. That's a big piece, and I know that can be complicated, obviously, but they're missing from the table. I think the other folks that'd be interesting to have at the table would be families that utilize early childhood services. And then the other ones would be CIS, Children's Integrated Services providers.
Thanks, Michelle. All super good ideas. And offline, if folks have specific contacts in mind for that would represent any of those identities or sectors, we are open to them. Anybody else? What about early elementary folks and like school district leadership? I think that, historically, and I don't think there's anybody on the call today, but historically we've had a strong representation from the Agency of Education, but not necessarily kind of more local and on the ground early elementary partners, with the exception of our pre-K coordinators who are awesome. Okay, maybe folks aren't in a brainstorming mood. That's okay.
So I'll say, I think it's important to have somebody from representing after school.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that school age piece.
Totally. Cynthia, go for it.
And I was just going to say, I agree with all of these ideas around additions about who to incorporate. I do wonder, at least in my experience, it's been really helpful to have very specific projects, a very specific strategy with a time-bound sort of work plan or action that we can invite someone into. I think it's really challenging for the folks in these different constituencies to participate, which is why they have traditionally not been a part of this, and yet we really want them to be. So I do wonder, before we do sort of like this broad outreach, inviting people into this space, are there spaces that we could go to where we could be ambassadors and collect information from them where they're already gathering? Or do we have specific strategies that this particular committee might shepherd, and we want to invite a couple of folks for a very tangible amount of time for a very tangible project? I worry about trying to throw open the door and saying, oh, we tried and then we didn't get anybody there, and we're still missing those voices because we haven't changed our behavior patterns. So I just kind of want to highlight that.
Thank you, Cynthia. I think that's a really, really great point. And I would welcome more conversations, and I imagine folks might want some time offline to review the strategic plan and think about, in the next year or so, what specific strategies or projects ELD might want to be a real strong kind of voice and group to help mobilize. And then I think, to your point, Cynthia, that could lead us to kind of more specific outreach and partnership opportunities. Other thoughts on that? Okay. Any other ideas, kind of shifting gears, any partners or topics that folks really want to make sure that we hear from in the next couple of months or in the next year? And I think, again, I think this is something we should probably come back to once folks have had time to sit with the strategic plan a little bit and think more about what role ELD wants to really focus on playing in the next 6 months to a year. But any things that are front of mind for folks at the moment?
I'll add something. I mean, I think that we have the goal and the objectives laid out, really trying to think about what that implementation really looks like, right? So that we're really utilizing these meetings to really drive that work. And so I think that we're able to really track our progress. It's hard to know. I mean, I started coming because I like learning, right? But who's officially on this committee, who's not on the committee? And so it's trying to figure out, if you're on the committee, you're accountable to driving that work forward. And so that doesn't mean that it's not an open meeting, but then trying to think about sort of how are we really making progress towards those goals and objectives. I mean, that has tended to be I found it to be a useful approach, having been part of other collective impact efforts.
Yeah, I really like that point, Helen. And that's something that we've talked a little bit about as a team when we're thinking about strategic plan kind of governance in this next chapter for the organization and for the network is do we build in some more opportunities for that kind of accountability and sharing about the monitoring that committees are doing? Like, do we have an annual opportunity for ELD to go to the state advisory council and say, you know, this is what we've been focusing on, this is what we're seeing in the system, this is what's making progress, and this is what's stalled, that we need kind of more leadership and kind of thinking around. So I think that to Cynthia's point about kind of the need for some more like tangible things for new partners in particular to sink their teeth into, I think that could help us with kind of increasing kind of the accountability that we feel as a group. Okay. Anybody else? Any like wish list? Like, we really want to hear from X about this program or that project, or? Okay. Well, folks know where to find me. I'm not gonna belabor the pregnant pause. And I think we'll return to this conversation once the strategic plan is endorsed and our policy recommendations are finalized, and maybe hone in a little bit on what we might want to use our time for in the next 6 months. Kind of a quick housekeeping note while I have the floor. We're going to hold a November meeting. We have Child Trends coming to present some more of their work and some other things, I think, on the deck, Dawn. But we are going to cancel that December meeting to give folks back some time pre-holidays. So that is all from me for now. But if anybody has if things come to you, you know, prior or after today's conversation, please reach out. Thanks, Dawn. I'll give it back to you.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that, you know, we asked Emily and Carolyn here today as a result of the previous committee meeting where there were questions about the application. So there's always going to be opportunities for sort of, like Anna said, those hot topics that kind of come in between, and we go, oh yeah, that would be really helpful for folks to put some eyes on. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the annual capacity. We're calling it internally QSIP, quality and capacity payment improvement payments, but they're also known as the annual payments. This is, you will remember or may remember or had no idea, was part of that 10 million quality and capacity set aside that came through Act 76. We broke it up into 3 main pillars: technical assistance through First Children's Finance, Sparks, so that coaching and quality with our STARS program, you know, the Sparks coaching and class assessments. We've included the new class database, which we had a demo on a few weeks ago. That's ramping up to be rolled out. That's part of that pillar. And then the final pillar was an annual payment directly to providers. We opened that application August 15th and it closed on September 15th. We had a great response. And then about 2 weeks in, any program we had not yet seen apply, there was a personal reach out to those individuals by our quality and capacity and STARS teams. So they broke up everyone that we hadn't seen an app from and then called them. We find that calling is better than emails in these situations. And we found that many providers said, number one, is this real? We didn't think that this was actually a real thing. And then others had questions about tax impacts and some other sort of general questions, and that we saw a great increase in our applications. We ended up having 805 complete and qualifying applications, which with a with a base of about 1,070 licensed and registered programs is not bad. That's a great percentage. of eligible programs. Of course, you needed to be able to accept or are accepting childcare financial assistance. So that did naturally disqualify some of our licensed and regulated programs. So in all, we had 805 programs that received payments, and it was just, I want to say it was really close to $2.8 million that was sent out between that third week in September and now. There are a few programs that we're still working out payments for because of, you know, Vision ID numbers and some other sort of technical issues, but the payments have, I can say, almost all have gone out. We did them in 3 batches because the folks in finance had to hand key every payment in. So it was a bit more of a complicated process than the readiness payments, which we were able to automate a little bit more. And, you know, folks, I think our top payment was around $22,000, and our lowest payment was about $250. And this was all depending on enrollment. So we feel pretty good about that process, how it rolled out, the application. You know, we feel like, you know, we've done this now a number of times. We feel like we've gotten tight with the application, with the process, with getting them to finance. But like I said, we do have a handful of folks that we're still figuring out, but very proud of how that worked. Very excited that this money is getting to the field. Several people have asked, is this monthly? And I'm like, no, it's going to be once a year. Look for the application again in August. It's not monthly. I'm sorry that it's not monthly, but we will be doing a little survey to the folks who've received the payment to ask, you know, impact, or were there specific things that they used these payments for. We are always, and I personally am always curious about, you know, what did you get a new deck? Like what about this payment was able to help you work on quality or sustainability of your business? As we know, every one of our licensed and regulated providers is important, very important in our system. So is there any questions about the annual payment, the process, anything that I can hopefully answer or at least do some research on? Yeah, Amelia.
That's so exciting. Makes me so happy. Are you going to be able to share the data that comes from what you were just describing, the information you collect on how people use?
Yeah, I usually try to do a little presentation after it takes me a little because you know, it's a big, I have to create the job form. There's a lot of steps that have to be done. But yes, absolutely. I like to do a presentation. I myself find it very personally impactful. I know that everyone here and everyone in the field finds it informative and impactful. I love to have that sort of information for Janet to have on hand when she is testifying or otherwise interacting with folks. I just think it makes Act 76 more real, sort of, you know, really based in what our workforce is experiencing, what our, you know, business owners are experiencing, and how that sustainability portion is needed. You know, I always said, listen, if you don't have an HVAC system that works, it's hard to keep your childcare open because you don't have heat, or you don't have, you know, it's 98 degrees in your classrooms and you can't keep them open. So sometimes I think we forget some of those really basic issues in running a successful and sustainable childcare. That this is what I love to see those. I mean, people can use it however they want. That's another question usually, as I'm is like, do I have to use it for something specific? I was like, no, do you need a new refrigerator? Okay, that's fine. Take care of your business. That's important. Don't put these things on your credit card or pay off your credit card that you've been partially financing your business on. But yeah, I'll share. That was a big circle. That was a big walk around that.
Well, I'm already excited to share those numbers with my favorite legislator. I already wrote it down. I can't wait to share it because it's an impact. He's very much moved by these numbers.
Yes.
So it's exciting. So exciting.
Other thoughts or questions? I'll just say again, I'm so proud of the team. I mean, these are always really big lifts, and it takes a really coordinated team effort to get these programs standing up and mostly smoothly running to the end and getting those payments out. So gold stars to the quality and capacity and stars team and the budget office and the finance folks.
Yeah.
All of the, and the
and
communications people.
I think that just gives us credibility as well, that as a profession, we aren't just saying, oh yeah, give us money, and then, well, whoever is ready to get it, we'll get it, but to really show that we're serious, because we know the outcome of these
Yeah.
unrestricted funds. So yeah, kudos to all those people.
Well, thank you. We're going to have some time for all of you to share general updates or points of interest. I did want to take a moment and talk a little bit very briefly about some things that have happened at the Child Development Division that I have an email to go out, but it got bumped yesterday because of a billion other things that suddenly caught on fire and popped up in front of me, as all of you will know. The Quality and Capacity team, which was formerly known as Systems, has had a little bit of a reorg. We looked at the needs of the team. As you know, Ray is a legislator for part of the time of the year, and we honor and value that. But we did find that for the team, it was just a little bit, what's the word I want? It was a transition that was a little bit jolting on each side. Ray was here, Ray was not here. So we looked at our positions with Lynn's retirement, and we saw an opportunity to create a leadership position that was on an equal level with Ray, so that Ray could be her legislative self and come back. And she's going to be doing like project management when she's back for part of the year. But we created a supervisory position from Lynn's position. And the person who's now in that position is Helen, who's here with us. So Helen is going to be the administrator, supervisory leader of the Quality and Capacity unit. Many of you are going to be having onboarding meetings with Helen. We're very excited. And we just posted what we're calling for New Helen, which is not obviously New Helen, but we have our habit is like, that's New Lynn. We've got to get better about that. But welcome, Helen. Would you like to just say a few words?
Sure. I'm excited to be in the role. Excited to think about how to integrate and align our work between obviously this committee and the goal 4, and reach out if I can ever be assistance, or if you have questions. Right, it'll be a learning for me, and I'm excited to take on the role.
Yay, Helen. So that's like our updates. We hired Elise Donor, who came. We're sorry, Northern Lights. We
I might forgive you, Dawn.
poached one of your people.
It's true. It's true.
So she is working, being onboarded with Ray and Helen and Jill Pearl as to the world of SAGs and some of the other projects that CDD is involved in. So we're excited to see our team recoalescing after a lot of transitional stuff this summer. So now I'm just going to open it up for, I'm just going to the chat to make sure I haven't missed any questions. Okay. Any other announcements or exciting tidbits? Any hot goss, as my daughter would say?
I'm excited. You want to know why I'm excited, Dawn?
Yes.
Because I just finally had my first cup of coffee. That's why.
Sometimes it's the little things, Amelia. Sometimes you're like, excellent. I had a therapist once tell me, Dawn, sometimes getting up and taking a shower is the way. And I went, yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
So Northern Lights has had a year-long project with fundamentals. We are right now piloting the new fundamentals, which is really exciting. Becky and I are really actually kind of excited to see the data and feedback from our two fantastic trainers, so that we can put the final bow on that and start offering that again in its new form. For February, we're offering 6 sections of this. And one of the things that's really exciting about it is I think we, with the help of many of you here and others who are not here, we're able to think about the learner's experience. What is the experience for these people new to the field, how to welcome them, but also have them become excited about the profession and understand why education is so important, why what they're learning is so important. And a way that we're doing that is having a lot more application in the training itself. Instead of sitting for 3 hours on Zoom and learning about a lot of stuff, there's a lot of hands-on work. And I've developed a companion tool for mentors, directors, who can walk along the path with their people that are in fundamentals, just to do some wraparound supports, because there are some students that find it to be a little bit of an upward battle to get onto Canvas and understand how to do this learning platform and then apply all their stuff. I see a lot of nods here. We all understand that. So I think the wraparounds for this new fundamental feel robust. And I know that Becky and I can't wait to start working on it and report back to you some more about that. So that's a big thing that's happening in our world.
Good, thank you. Yes, I'm excited too. Any other announcements or shares?
Hey Dawn, this is Cynthia, and I
Hi.
just want to spread the word. If folks haven't seen it, we'd love for folks to remind the field that the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets Farm to School and Early Childhood Grants program is open and accepting applications. These are grants that are open to early childhood programs. Some nice money comes with these sort of open-ended grants to think about nutrition, agriculture, food education, food in their programs. Do they need a new refrigerator? We can add to that little pot of quality money there. So we're really hoping folks refer the field to the Agency of Ag website to find those grants and apply. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the application closes at the end of this month.
Excellent, thank
Thanks.
you, Cynthia.
I guess I could give a little bit of an update on the impact of the federal shutdown on Head Start programs. So what most people don't realize is that Head Start programs are funded on I'll call it a rolling basis. So like my program is funded August through July. So I already have my funds through July. Another program might be funded January through December, so they'll get their money in January. So right now, nobody is impacted. None of the Vermont programs are impacted yet because we don't have anybody who has an October through September grant cycle. There is one program that runs November 1st through October 31st, so that could become problematic. There's another one that runs December 1st, so if this keeps on going, again, a second program could be impacted. And then there are 2 or 3 in January. So hopefully this will be cleared up by the end of the month and there'll be no impact on services. That's what we're gonna root for. So if things change, I'll, be in touch in various formats.
Thank you, Christy. Yeah, we're watching closely. And Renee, Renee keeps us briefed, thank heavens, but yeah, we're all sort of in a pause. I know I've in a meeting yesterday with Matt, I said, yeah, everything's just kind of in stasis. We're all waiting. Yeah. Well, I keep remembering things. And Jonathan, I'll be going, oh yeah, I should say that. The PITC course will start again in January. So we will have 2 cohorts. We're planning for another 2 cohorts in this upcoming year. It has been very successful and very popular. The folks who respond to our surveys have loved it and said, are you doing it again? Because I have colleagues that I would like to recommend it to. So we're going to be doing another cycle of that. We're finishing the grant paperwork. So be on the lookout for the information that this is going to be opening an enrollment. Again, I got to build a JOT form. So that will happen. And then the other thing that is
Dawn,
nearing the
before you go, I just want to mention we have started getting transcripts in too. So when folks complete the PITC course, they do get credits for it. If you have anyone you know that's taken it, encourage them send their transcripts into Northern Lights so we can get it into their accounts for them. And we're able to put it in. It will count for child development credits that are required for like the teacher assistant role. So if you have any questions, let us know, but we are starting to see those transcripts rolling in.
Yeah. Thank you, Becky. Yes, that's the important partner side of the PITC trainings. And like I said, I think that they've been a nice way to sort of give specific infant toddler, which is always one of those areas that folks are like, we need more specific infant toddler. The other thing that I am finishing up is the RFP for the infant toddler credential development. I'm hoping to finish that this week. We're in the final questions back from grants and contracts to Dawn, who then has to answer a question. So we're in that sort of final back and forth. I know for many folks here on the call, the infant toddler credential idea has been a decade or so in the making. So we're almost there. I joked to Janet that I said I was going to get it done in my first year of being here. And then I was more realistic with how things run. But 2.5 years, that's not bad. We're, in the scheme of things, 2.5 years. So that is a true RFP and will be going out to bid. So hopefully by the end of the year, early next year, we'll see that beginning. So that's, woohoo, we're almost there with that. Any other announcements or shares? I know we're right up against time. Good for us.
Just to say, I think that this has probably been sent out by Anna or shared otherwise. Apologies if it's duplicative. We just sent out our first sort of quarterly digest around Act 76 updates. And we are hosting 2 in-person. We hosted one already, a conversation with around Act 76, how it's going to inform our annual monitoring report. So that was up in Newport. We have one in Sheldon coming up on the 21st, one in Brattleboro on the 23rd, and then a daytime virtual and an evening virtual. So those events are up on our Act 76 monitoring page, and the digest, if you scroll down just a little bit more, is on that page as well. We will be working with many of you to pull together information for that annual report that's due to the legislature. And the other thing is our October 27th State Advisory Council meeting is coming up, and we will be both endorsing the new strategic plan and also talking about policy recommendations, many of which have come from this committee. So that's an in-person event, but I believe there will also be a link if you can't join in person.
Dora. Okay, is there what more? Well, we got a little time. I thought we were ending at 11:30. I was like, look at us, right on time. That was strange. Well, if there are no more announcements or shares, I won't belabor the meeting and, offer folks a few minutes back in their day to maybe get a snack or whatever you need to do in between meetings. I know everybody's got packed days, so thank you very much. As Anna said, we'll see you in November and no meeting in December because we know schedules get packed and travel and all of the things. So thanks. Enjoy the rest of your day.